What's good, y'all? It's your girl, Tech Life Steph. Season 2 of The Pivot with Stephanie Humphrey is in full effect. Super happy to be here with you on Roland Martin's Black Star Network. If you don't know, The Pivot is actually based on a TEDx I did, which talked about my own personal transition from engineering into the media space. And Roland got this great idea that I should talk about that with people that I know that have made great pivots in their lives as well, and hopefully help you in whatever transition you are making in your life, whether it's a new job, going back to school, maybe you pivoting out of a relationship, whatever you're doing, we are here to provide you with inspiration, motivation, hopefully education, and a little entertainment there all at the same time. So I am very happy to welcome my guest today because we are talking about pivoting outside the box. So, how do you kind of break out of traditional thinking, maybe do something a little crazy, a little scary, a little extra to help you sort of get yourself, shake things up really, and get yourself into a space where you can do something different. And today I am very happy to have my guest, Marcus Allen. He is the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters in the Independence region. I'll let him tell you all about what Independence region means and what area that encompasses. But Marcus, thank you so much for being with me today on The Pivot.
Stephanie, thank you. It is an honor to be on this show with you. I've seen so much of your stuff on social media, and I always wonder, when am I going to get my turn? So
today's the day.
I appreciate you reaching out, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Awesome. So let's just dive right in because you've had a very varied life and journey. So let's go back to college. I don't know if we talked about the full disclosure, y'all. Me and Marcus know each other. We're friends. So we're gonna talk like friends. And we're gonna just have a conversation. But I don't know if I knew you went to school on an engineering scholarship. Did we ever talk about that?
I don't think we did.
How we ain't talk about that? And I'm a whole engineer.
It's so
like
much.
A whole engineer. Like we should have talked about this.
We have so much to talk about when we get together. Like we can never get to everything because it's so much.
It's true.
Yeah, and oftentimes when we get together, we're talking about what's right in front of us. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting, but yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago. Oftentimes when I speak to people, they're just like, I didn't know you were in the military, or I didn't know you went to school for engineering, or I didn't know, and I've had this really blessed life, to be honest with you. And I love the topic of the show, pivoting outside the box, because, basketball is important to me. And one of the most important moves in basketball is to pivot, right? Yes. One of the most important moves in business is to pivot. And so my whole life has really been one pivot after the other. Right. And so speaking of college, I came from a family, I was telling someone the other day that, no one in my immediate family ever even graduated from high school. And so I grew up with this idea of, after, going through periods of homelessness and abject poverty and the violence that you see growing up in tech work projects and being from Atlanta, I had this dream. It was almost this aspiration to go to college because nobody around me had ever gone to college. And I had no idea what that statement even meant. Mm-hmm. And so what I did, I had this belief that if I was able to leverage my education to get to college, that I could escape poverty. That was the whole plan. That was my whole vision board.
Right. College.
Right?
College. Yep. Right? I don't know how I'm paying for it. I don't know how I'm getting in, but all I know is college.
Yep, I just got to get there. And so I joined the military after my 11th grade year of high school because I know we couldn't afford college. And so they had the GI Bill. And I was just, blessed to grow about 6 inches from my 10th grade year to my 12th grade year. And I was trying to play basketball at the time and just got really good at basketball. And ended up getting an opportunity to go to an HBCU, Payne College in Augusta, Georgia, on both a General Motors engineering scholarship, which I was supposed to do a dual degree program, go to Payne for 3 years, go to Tuskegee, one of the greatest engineering schools in the country, for 2 years. But basketball sent me in a different direction because I had a great college career and ended up playing professional basketball after that.
But let's stay here for another second or two, because I can remember, because I run a little ball myself from time to time, and I can remember when I visited the campus of Florida A&M University, I knew I was going to be an engineering major, but I also spoke to the women's basketball coach because I, had sort of in my mind figured, maybe I could just walk on, get redshirted, who knows, but do that at the same time. When I understood what the requirement was and what the commitment was, it sort of kicked that out of the range of possibility for me with all of the credits I needed as an engineering major, and then trying to practice and wake up and do. I was just like, you know what, I don't think this is for me. So what was the mindset that you had to have to make that commitment to both?
Well,
what made you think you could even do both?
Yeah, I don't like. That's an interesting question to me because I never even considered like what the mindset was. It was the mindset was I'm going to college and I'm going to get out of there and get a good job, right, and take care of my family,
right. And
so whatever that required, I was willing to do. And for whatever reason, well, I know the reason. Like I grew up in a hard working family. My grandfather was a hard worker. My mom was a hard worker, but they were hard working and it didn't seem to benefit them. No matter how hard they worked, they could never get ahead. Like it's always, chasing, paycheck to paycheck, that whole thing. And so I had that work ethic in me. And so, and when I got to college, I said to myself, I said, you know what, I'm going to beat everybody on the team. Right. I'm going to be better than everybody on the team. There was this guy, Larry Washington, who was the leading scorer. And he was like the basketball superstar of the college and the conference. And every day I competed with him. I said, he's the person I'm going to compete with. And then it was school just came easy to me. And so I had the highest GPA of all the athletes. And I wasn't a person who studied a lot. It just came to me. It was just something that was natural. And so for me, it was never completely this mindset. It was more of this optimism that I had about what I was going to accomplish. And really it was, I grew up in a faith-filled household. My grandmother would always say, always lean into your fear. She said, because fear is faith in the devil having triumph in your life. So, yeah. And I was just like, well, I would never, and I grew up saying, I'm never going to be like, let fear control who I am, what I do, and who I become. And so when I got to college, it was a totally new environment. I was coming from, we left Atlanta, and I mostly was raised in Thompson, Georgia, small, rural, 6,000 population town. And I had this really thick accent. I had a thick country accent for country people.
You was even too country for country.
They're like, where are you from? And I'm like, and going into an environment where you were having all these black kids from all over the country, California, Michigan, all of these different places, all these different backgrounds, was really eye-opening for me. It was this diversity of black folks. And we had some from Bahamas and from Africa. And I was just like, oh my God, I never knew that black folks were so talented and so diverse. And so when you talk about mindset like that, I wouldn't even call it a mindset. I had like a mind frame because it was being molded, right? Mindset kind of says you're stuck in a box. And it was like this thing just kept expanding my mind as it related to the excellence of black folks. And the more I got exposed to that excellence, the more I wanted of it. So I couldn't even envision it before I got to college. To be honest with you, my vision was small, get to college. And then I get to college, I'm like, my mind just
exactly.
Like, oh my God, right?
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. This is an opportunity for us to be able to speak to our issues. Y'all better understand something real quick. We ain't going nowhere. It is a continual battle that we see all across this country. Revolution will not be televised. The revolution will be streamed.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
He makes sure that our stories are told.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
For everybody who is watching, I mean, I'm a stan HBCUs all day long. I am a Rattler for life. And I think what you just said makes such an amazing case for why Black folks should patronize HBCUs, because everybody likes to use that old tired trope. Well, HBCUs don't reflect the real world and the real world ain't all Black. I'm like, but all Black people aren't the same. So it's not like you're going to this place where everybody is some sort of zombie with the same mentality and drinking the Kool-Aid. You have people who are Republicans and conservatives and liberals, but you get to be exposed to that type of Black excellence where your roommate's mom was a judge and your best friend's dad is a cardiologist, and just from the janitor all the way up to the CEO, you get such a diverse breadth of exposure to different types of Black people, which I think would serve any other Black person well to be able to experience. So shout out HBCUs all day. I'm HBCU all day. HBCU love.
I'm with you, Steph. Listen, and I didn't have the discipline to go to FAMU because had I gone, I probably wouldn't have graduated.
A lot of people say that.
But I will say that just a quick tangent. People now they're talking about reparations and all of that, and I had I think two things could really help in terms of the reparations conversation. Mm-hmm. One is every Black person is funded to go to a HBCU. Boom. Any Black person that wants, to me, this is reparations. Two things.
Yes.
Every Black person that wants to go to an HBCU should be able to go for free.
Yes.
Not on the backs of the HBCU, but government pays for it, right? And then two, every Black person gets a $1 million life insurance policy paid for. Federal government. And so if you do, for me, those two things, to me, we don't need to be
would change the game. Change the game.
$5 million like they talk about in San Francisco, because you give people money who haven't been trained and shown how to manage.
Teach them to fish. Teach them to fish.
It'll mess them up, right?
Yep.
And so, but to me, anyway, but yeah, HBCU.
No, that's brilliant though. I gotta say, I the education piece I could see, but I didn't think about the life insurance piece, because that's the legacy and the generational wealth that we don't have the luxury of having right now. And man,
yeah. And think about this.
Can we get Joe Biden on the phone? Like, we need to get this popping.
And here's the other thing: people would be more careful with the value of Black life. Because they would be like, listen, Wall Street would be like, oh my God, like, listen, we can't have y'all here killing Black people. We got to figure out this Black on Black crime. We got
to get these cops to stop killing these Black people, because we paying out way too much money. Ooh,
absolutely.
you done said a word right now, man.
That's reparations.
Well, listen, we putting it out there. We manifesting that right now, right with this show, this episode right now. We manifesting that, because that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant.
You tell Roland I said it.
Will do. I love it. I love it. All right. So
for me, that engineering degree was huge, because at the time, if you remember, I went to school I was in college from 90 to 93. I ended up leaving early to play ball, but it was at a time where you were having this big rivalry between Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at and at that time, computers are, we were doing COBOL and Pascal and all those.
I know. I know.
Nothing close to what they're doing today with coding.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Right.
Fortran.
Right. Fortran. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But
I could see, I'm looking at this thing and I'm just like, man, if I could get a job in this industry, IBM, it was,
HP,
HP, like all of those Dell, like it was, I think it was
Dell, Sun Microsystems.
Yes, absolutely. And so I was like, if I can get a job in that, like that could sustain me and my family for the rest of our life. So that was my goal once I got to college. And then I saw, to your point, Black royalty. I saw Black excellence. I saw like just Black folks excelling, and not just the students, but then you would talk to the teachers and the professors and the faculty and everyone at that school was just like, you're gonna be somebody.
That's right.
Everybody was instilling that confidence.
Singularly focused on your success. And that's the other thing, we had taken another sidebar for HBCU love. The people most of the people, I'll put it this way, on HBCU campuses are singularly focused on the success of those students at that campus. I mean, I have so many stories. So, and I know anybody on any HBCU campus can tell you stories. I mean, maybe the financial aid office might not have seemed like they was focused on your success, but the professors, the career development people, the administrators, everybody really truly wanted to see Black folks succeed. And in a world where we already know what we're up against, having that type of support, that level of support in those very formative years is invaluable. It's something that you can't, and people always wonder, why am I, oh my God, everybody, people, if you know, when you meet somebody from FAMCO, they just, yes, there's a reason for that. And that was instilled on that campus. And so again, if you get a chance, Black folk, send your kids to a HBCU. Seriously. Absolutely. All right. I'm off my soapbox. Moving on. We're moving on. So now you do the HBCU thing. You get this opportunity to play ball. We could spend the whole episode on your basketball career, but we're not going to do that. I'm sure you have lots of wonderful, experiences and learnings and lessons that you took from that. But then you pivot to, I say, from basketball to the boardroom. And we don't really see that a lot, unfortunately, with professional athletes. You got those outliers like Magic Johnson and Shaq and a few other folks that were able to make that transition. But we don't see that a lot, especially in your particular situation where you went from basketball to actually running a company. So talk about that transition.
Well, just on that statement, though, I think we may not see it a lot, but it happens more often than one would think.
Okay.
Oftentimes I believe student athletes are some of the best business people in the world. And because, to your point about when you were in college, having to think about juggling both being good on the court or the field and being good in the classroom, that is great breeding ground for corporate America, nonprofit, whatever industry you're going into. And so I find that many of the people that I played ball with that played ball in college and went on to play professionally, they leave that professional sport with this yearning to do something for self, because you've been an A-type personality and been at the top of your game in sports. It's hard to humble yourself and say, okay, now I'm gonna go work for somebody.
Right.
Right. That is very difficult. That is, and I didn't understand how difficult that was until I finished playing ball and I moved here to Philly in the end of 1999, right before Y2K. Mm-hmm. And I had this money and I was like, I need to invest it. And I made some investments and I made the mistake of investing in technology right before Y2K hit. And I was like, okay, I got to get a job. Right. And I had never, outside of working for McDonald's when I was a teenager, I had never had a job before, like a job where I had to sustain myself by myself.
Right.
And got here to Philadelphia and was like trying to find myself because I left school early and didn't get my degree in engineering. So I had some work to do. So I ended up going to Temple University and I went to the guidance counselor. I said, degree can I get and get out of here the fastest? Because if I had done engineering, it would take me another 3 years because
Right.
it's a whole different curriculum. And they said psychology. And so I took psychology. And while I was doing that, I took this job with this for-profit and was able to become the COO of this national for-profit in 5 years. They said they'd never seen anything like that. And I think where that came from was this, like, I don't belong here. I don't belong at the bottom.
Right.
Right. I need to be making decisions. I need to be in that room. And I carried myself with that. And I remember there were other Black men around me my age, and they were from Philly, and they would mess with me a little bit when I first got here. And one of the guys said to me once, he said, "Marcus, why do you think you can just say anything you want to anybody?"
Because I can.
I said, "What do you mean?" He said, you just come right. He said, "Philly, like, we keep things close to the chest, to the vest." And I was just like, I don't like beating around the bush. I'm not that type of guy. Like, either you like it or you don't, but I just want to be genuine. I want to be authentic. And I believe, and this is 20 something years ago. Now people talk about authenticity all the time.
Right.
20 something years ago, as a Black man, people weren't talking about authenticity in Philadelphia.
Authenticity could get you in a fight.
Right. Someone told me, they said, Marcus, you in the Army. He said, authenticity in Philadelphia and standing out and being bold is like you standing straight up in a war and there's snipers out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's true. But yeah.
They're about to take you out. And so I never bought into that because in my head, I'm thinking about my grandma. I'm like, that's fear, right? That's you. And you're thinking about fear. I am here. And I am going to show people who I am. And I have nothing at the time, Stephanie. And that just was this belief that if I show people who I am, good things will happen, even in business. Right. And then I became the COO for this for-profit. And my goal was to become the president. And the president knew it. And he came down and he and I would talk. They were out in Arizona. And they wanted me to do this business expansion with them. And I just didn't believe that it was the right thing. And in some ways, I didn't think it was ethical. And that's when I left the for-profit world to go into the nonprofit world. Okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you landed at Big Brothers Big Sisters because in your bio, you talk about a mentor you had at age 9. Yeah. Talk about that. Tell us about that.
Yeah. It was this guy, Willie Williams. He was a police officer, Black man, young. He had gone off to college. He was one of the only people I knew that was Black and went to college outside of the few teachers that we had at our schools, right? Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, he took a liking to me. And I just, remember this conversation or series of conversations that he would have with me. And he said, Marcus, what I didn't share with your audience is when I was born, I had this disease in my legs. And the doctor told my mom that I wouldn't walk properly or play sports because she didn't have the money. We were homeless at the time to get the surgery that I needed. Mm. And I was trying to play football at the time. I was around 9 or 10 and he saw me struggling and he would bring me to the side and said, Mark, you don't have to be the strongest, the fastest, the most talented. He said, what I need you to do anytime we put someone in front of you, I just need you to outwork them. That's it. That's your job, is just to outwork them. And that resonated with my spirit. It resonated with my heart and mind. He planted a seed. He didn't even know that was like, okay, you created a beast, right? I went from B mode to beast mode, right?
Okay.
And so I remember how inspired I was with him spending so much time with me and talking to me and knowing that he went to college and saying, I know I can do it because he did it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that was, and then when the opportunity at Big Brothers Big Sisters came up, I remember, I was like, mentorship is so important. Now, I didn't understand mentorship the way Big Brothers Big Sisters understands it because they have, they know the art and science of it and the metrics and the outcomes and the data and the research, right? But I knew the soul tie type of mentorship. I knew what it meant to have an image of somebody that shattered the image that America puts on you for as it relates to Black men, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember that image breaking for me and it being poignant in my life. And so when this opportunity came up, I was like, you know what? I think that may be something I can pour myself into, and I put my hat in the ring 10 years ago. Actually, April 15th of this month will be my 10th year as the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters Independence.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
Now, and shout out to anybody who takes an interest in a young person. You don't necessarily have to formalize your relationship and declare yourself a mentor, but just understand that there are people watching you. There are people looking up to you. There are people, peeping your journey and emulating that journey. So we all have to be very careful about the type of things we put out there. What was that? I guess I'm trying to pivot back in, but maybe it wasn't a pivot. But what was the pressure like being the first African American CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters Independence?
Well, first, let me also give you a shout out, because you were one of the first people that reached out to me when I took the job, and your audience, you were big in our program, and you took the time to dedicate your time and energy to help a young girl to see what could be possible for her. So thank you for your commitment, your generosity, to helping us be successful in recruiting young boys and girls. Yeah, so it's interesting. When I came to the organization, I was surprised to learn that an organization that serves 65% or more people of color, 90% of the kids that we serve live below the poverty line, right? Majority of the kids come from single parent households, and it's been that way for a long time. We've been around since 1915,
right?
And to find out that you're doing all of that great work in the Black community and you've never had a Black CEO. But it wasn't, at that time, it wasn't unfathomable, because many nonprofits, during the time when I started getting into nonprofit, I noticed that most of the organizations were ran by white men and women.
Yeah.
And so when I got to Big Brothers Big Sisters, and we had a board made up of like 65% or more white males over the age of 55. And then we had about 70% of our staff made up of white women between the ages of, say, 24 and 30.
Mm-hmm. And
the board telling me that our biggest challenge was recruiting Black men. I said, of course you have a challenge.
Exactly.
Right?
Duh.
Want to go into spaces that they feel like they're wanted, that they're desired, that they can be comfortable, safe, and engaging spaces. How can you tell Black people that this is an organization that welcomes you when they don't see any other Black people, right? That sends the wrong message. And so I knew that I had my work cut out for me from a DEI perspective, taking this job, even though, let me give the board all the credit in the world. Like, they would have very blunt, open conversations about, we know we are way too white.
Right.
We know that, we have no idea how to make our organization more diverse, and we're hoping that you can help to educate us. And I said, well, hiring one Black man that only has one Black opinion.
Right.
Right. I said, but I do appreciate the support and the serious approach that the board was taking to correcting something that had been an issue for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to say that, and it was great. And the staff were very woke, understood that, they understood the assignment, as they say. So it made my job a lot easier than I thought it was going to be in terms of really pushing, I'm universally for everybody, right? Like, that's just me as a person. I want everybody to win. And I also know that I have to put extra emphasis on Black folks.
Yes.
Right. And so it made it easier for me to push this Black agenda that I know needed to be pushed in a city of majority Black people like Philadelphia. Right. And if I was going to get the support of the Black community, Black politicians, Black churches, all the different neighborhoods and communities around Philadelphia, we were going to have to change how we looked, how we talked, how we infuse the voices of other folks into the work that we do. And I'd like to think that we've been somewhat successful in doing that. We still got a long way to go. Mm-hmm. But Big Brothers Big Sisters has allowed me to continue to be the type of leader that I see myself being. I haven't had to compromise. Right. While I've been in the role, I have had some challenges that, you as a leader, you don't build a shiny boat to sit in the harbor. You build that boat to be out on the open sea to go through storms. And one of the things as a leader, for whatever reason, I love going into the storm because it validates to me if I'm as good a leader as I think I am. Right. And so Big Brothers Big Sisters, we've gone into a number of storms. And some of those storms had to do with racial and social justice stuff.
And we'll talk about that.
Yep. And so, but Big Brothers Big Sisters has that opening starting out. I was a little bit all right, Marcus, here comes the test.
But you clearly were up for the challenge. Congratulations again on your upcoming 10-year anniversary as CEO. And I would also be remiss if I did not shout out really quickly an organization in Philadelphia, Diverse Force. Go back to season 1 to my interview with Suleiman Rahman when I talk about how important networking is to pivoting. He is the CEO of Diverse Force, of an organization called Diverse Force, because, Marcus just talked about how the board and everybody from the top to the bottom was a little too white. Diverse Force on Boards is a program designed specifically to prepare people of color to serve on nonprofit boards. And it is an amazing program. I've been through that program. I serve on 2 nonprofit boards right now, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. And when you're talking about doing the work to change the system from within, this is part of that work. This is how you do that thing. You get in to those boards, you get into those spaces where they're having the conversations about how the money is going to get spent and how funds are going to get allocated and resources are going to get allocated. But think about the idea of serving on a nonprofit board, if you're able, because you do get to really shape policy that can change the dynamic of an entire community. So I just had to put that plug out there. All right. So now we are pivoting again outside the box, because you've done some really, really interesting, creative, potentially dangerous things to raise money for Big Brothers Big Sisters. The first thing you did was you biked across country. Talk to us a little bit about that endeavor.
Yeah, if I could even back that up, because the genesis of that was probably 11, 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And one of my friends was going to run in the Broad Street Run, and he asked me to join him. And I said, no. I said, man, I can't, my knees, and I'm making all these excuses. And I am not an excuse person, Stephanie. Like, it really bothers me when I hear excuses. Like, I'm even, changing my language around, trying to getting the word try out of my language, because try is a built-in excuse. And I remember after that conversation with him, I'm thinking, oh my God, I feel so bad that I made all those excuses. So that following year, I decided I was going to run a mile every day for 365 days, no matter how I felt. And I would get up at night, I forget sometimes I get up at night, 11 o'clock, I got to get this mile in. Mm-hmm. And once I did that, I was like, oh my God, that was awesome for a whole year. Then I said, what's the next thing? And so every year I was doing something that I'd never done before. And I was leaning into that fear, right, of stuff. And so then that led up to, and that was before I got to Big Brothers Big Sisters. And now I'm at Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I saw an opportunity to combine this personal lifestyle that I had of challenging myself with the work that I was doing to inspire staff and board members and the community. And so, and to let people into who Marcus Allen was, really. And that same guy who had invited me to run Broad Street Run, who's done a number of marathons and done some triathlons and stuff like that, he and I would always talk, and he got me to start riding, cycling a little bit. So I bought a bike. And then a good friend of mine, Charlie Mack, was like, hey man, I bought a bike. I said, I told him he should buy a bike. And so he bought a bike and a couple of his friends. So then we just started riding around like the Philadelphia Art Museum. And one day we were sitting out on the steps after probably a 10-mile ride. And we see like 30 folks with these shirts on, and they're young, and they come over. And I said, hey, why you guys got the shirts on? They say, we're from New York, and we're training for a Black Lives Matter ride from New York to DC. This was in 2020, the summer of 2020, right after George Floyd, right?
Okay.
And I'm sorry, it was 2021. Because they were preparing to do the ride from New York to DC, because Al Sharpton was doing the big march in Washington, DC. Mm-hmm. And so I said, oh, that sounds awesome. And I said, I'll follow you on Instagram. And I started following them on Instagram, and I got inspired. These are mostly Black young folks out of New York. I got inspired, and I called my man, Charlie Mack. I said, yo, man, I'm going to do this ride with these young people. He said, man, get out of here. I said, yes, I'm going to do it. And it's like 300 something miles. And at that time, remember, we were riding 10 miles a day.
Right. So this is a little bit more than just a 10-mile ride.
Right. And so I did that. And while I was doing it, we ran into this guy who had rode his bike from Texas to DC for the Al Sharpton march. And he was an old guy. And once he had this conversation with me, I say, if he can do that, I can do a cross-country ride. Mm-hmm. It just came in my head. And I came back to my team at Big Brothers Big Sisters. I said, I got a great idea for a fundraiser. I said, we're going to be celebrating our 106th year anniversary this year. I'll get 2 or 3 buddies. We'll ride our bike from San Francisco to Atlantic City, 3,500 miles, more or less. And we'll raise $106,000 for Big Brothers Big Sisters. And my team looked at me like I was crazy. It's like where do you get this stuff, right? And it was one of the scariest things that I've ever said I was going to do. And the other guys who were riders, they were just like, Marcus, we don't see how you're going to be able to complete this ride. They said, you're 6'7", you're 265 pounds. We cannot see how you're going to get that amount of weight over the Colorado Rockies. He said, you don't understand. This is not just riding a bike and having fun. Like, we got to go through the salt flats of Utah, 115 degrees. The salt is pulling the moisture out of your body. You can't get enough water into your body because of that condition. Going through Lake Tahoe, and we had the first mountain that we had to do, and I never rode a bike up a mountain before. Like, they were just like, we just don't, like, we don't see it. And I said, well, you
how, Sway?
You don't know my guy, Okay. And so I convinced the board. Like, it was like, that was very contentious with my board too. that there was a lot of conversations, as you can imagine. It was like, it's too risky. What organization would allow their CEO to do something like this, where the CEO could lose his life, his life? It's just too much risk, right? It's just too much risk and not enough reward. And I basically was just like, I hear everybody like, listen, today people are like, oh man, I'm so glad we did. But then,
but back then,
it really got to this point, Steph, where it was just like, either you're not going to do this, or if you do this, I don't know if you're going to have a job. Right? That's how deep it was.
Wow.
It was that deep, right? It was that big split at the board level. Right?
So what was finally the thing that sold it and that sold it to them?
I think there were a couple board members who, one in particular, who said, he said, I see where he's a very successful CEO. And he said, people don't know that I started my company from doing something similar to what Marcus is talking about. I went on this trek, 8-day trek. And that gave me time to really think about my business and think about what I wanted to do. When I came back, I started this business that now is a $1 billion business, right? And other CEOs on the board started to talk about this idea that CEOs go away a lot of times to just be in their head, and it helps them to be better leaders. And so we could benefit. This is just about Marcus got this crazy idea to ride his bike across country. There's a lot of benefit in here for him. And if he's our leader, then we want what's best for him, because whatever's best for him is going to be best for us.
For the company. Yeah.
Right. So they started to spin it away from people looking at the risk or looking at like, this is all about Marcus, and saying, well, it should be about Marcus. He's our leader.
Right.
Right. Right. So, and CEOs, somebody like, I would take 2 weeks off just to go to a place of refuge and read. Right. I'm feeling myself up. Like, I got this thing called cups and candles. And this bike ride helped me to understand this concept of, before the bike ride, I was the type of person, I'm always out. I'm always trying to meet people. I'm always trying to promote. And then my cup would get empty. I would go home, go to sleep, wake up, and then do the same thing the next day. I've now, from the bike ride, understood that it's not good for me to ever empty my cup.
Right.
And so now I go with overflow. Every day before I leave my house, my cup has to be overflowing. And my cup stays full for me, and everybody else gets to overflow. Right. And so that I can continue to keep my battery charged, because the more, if you have anything and you let that battery keep going down, and then you got to charge it, you let it go all the way down, you got to recharge it.
Right.
The capacity continues to decrease.
That's right.
Right. And so for me, the bike ride showed me why I had to pour so much into me, because I had so much I had to give, but it wasn't fair to the people that relied on me, that I was responsible for, that I would get empty. I would allow my cup to be empty. So that bike ride, not only did, we double our goal in terms of fundraising. We raised over $200,000. We got more donors than we've ever got from across the country. Like, we got donations from all over the country. We got more visibility than we've ever gotten as an organization. It galvanized our board in such a way that, like, we had a lot of tough stuff we were having to deal with because of the pandemic. But more importantly, I believe it sent an amazing message to and this was part of the reason for the bike ride. I wanted to send a message to adults, to the leaders of Philadelphia and in Pennsylvania, that our kids are suffering. And this was just a small symbol of me and my team going through this suffering, because the suffering of our kids at the time was it was invisible, because everyone was talking about, like, what's going on with business, what's going on with adults. Nobody was really talking about what was going on with kids.
That's right.
And so it was to raise the message and say, and my message to kids, saying, I'm going to do this small thing as a symbol of the suffering that I see all of you going through. And I was trying to ring the alarm then, about if we don't do something now for our kids, when things are normalized, we're going to have a huge issue.
Right.
Right. And so, and I said it while I was on the bike ride when I was being interviewed by different news stations across the country. I said, here's what you have to understand. I always quote my grandmother. My grandmother said, if kids don't have something to do, they're going to get in trouble.
That's right.
That's it. And the pandemic shut everything down and took everything away. And I said, our kids don't, we serve kids who live below the poverty line. So they're living in apartments with multiple people staying in apartments. They don't have the same luxuries that some of us have, where we can be in our house and still feel like a resort, right?
Right.
They're in communities that are being invisible, that are being ignored. And that buildup is going to cause a lot of issues and challenges for our kids and families. So the bike ride for me was, I got to bring awareness to this situation that people didn't seem to see at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And you did a phenomenal job with that.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
However, it seems as though you didn't think that was enough, riding from California to Atlantic City. That's cool and all, but that's just small potatoes. So then you decide, I'm going to climb a whole mountain, and Kilimanjaro now becomes your next conquest. Talk to us about that experience.
I don't know, like stuff just comes to me, right? and it's not planful. It's not strategic. It's more opportunistic. Mm-hmm. And one of my board members had told me about this fundraiser that they were doing in Boston for some the biotech industry was doing this fundraiser and climbing Kilimanjaro. And when she told me about it, I said, we should do it in Philly. She said, absolutely. And I was like, okay, we're doing it. And so, we started reaching out to folks. I told the board about it early on because I wanted to avoid what we went through with the bike ride. Mm-hmm. Started getting my buy-in early with the board members, got them to buy in. And I said, we can raise even more money. My goal was to raise $500,000, right? Mind you, I've never hiked before, never did a mountain.
Of course not, because that would make it too easy.
Right? Never been to Africa, and so all of that was exciting and scary at the same time. And I was sharing that with people, and people just got inspired. And so I ended up recruiting 18 people, many of them that didn't know each other, but they believed in the mission of Big Brothers Big Sisters. Mm-hmm. And similar deal, hey, we climbing this mountain because we have kids who are climbing much greater obstacles than what we could ever climb. And we started, talking to some people who were not experts, but who could give us advice to make sure that we keep people safe. We ended up leaving Philadelphia, and we had some people from New York too, and one other place, I think it was Boston, flying to Africa at the end of November. Met up with an amazing tour guide, Wilfred Moshi, from Tanzania. Wilfred is the only African to climb to the top of Everest.
Oh, wow.
21,000 feet, the tallest mountain in the world.
Yeah.
and the kind of conditions at the top of Everest. And he's done Kilimanjaro like 50 or 60 times, right? And so he had started his own company 13, 14 years ago, was amazing. And we get there and Africa was beautiful. The people of Tanzania, oh man, you will never find as humble, as nice, as genuine a people as what we found in Tanzania. It was just like my heart felt at home. Mm-hmm. And then, now we have this mountain in front of us to climb. And I tell you, they call them porters. So each person who's climbing has 3 porters assigned to them. And there's a couple guides. And those porters and those workers, we would start out in the morning and they would start out with us. They would run ahead of us with everything on their heads, the kitchen, the toilets, the food, everything we were going to need. They would get to the camp before us, have the camp set up. And then by the time we get there, we're just eating and getting ready for the next day. And they would break it down the next morning and do the same thing 8 days straight.
So basically the porters did all the work is what you're telling me.
Porters did all the work. Listen, let me see like those.
Y'all was walking, but the porters was doing the work. Yeah. Shout out to the porters in Africa.
Stuff. Yeah. But I'll tell you, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I got sick the second day. I lost 20 pounds in 8 days. Mm-hmm. Altitude sickness is real. It came a point like some of us got really, really bad sick. And one of the things they told us is when groups come, 50% of groups normally don't make it. Mm. So our whole thing when we started out was 100% of us going to complete this trip.
Right.
And we completed it. It was, the lesson that I learned from that was I went there thinking that this was just about a mountain climb. And I learned so much about me and leadership when I went there. And I've been a leader who's always been focused on results and focused on the goal and all of that stuff. And it really reinforced this idea of enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
Because now that I'm back and I've done the climb, the thing that I remember is not getting to the top. Because once you get to the top, it's so cold and windy up there. You spend 15 minutes and say, okay, now it's time to go back.
Right. Like, let me take my selfie. All right, I'm ready to go.
Right. And it's the same thing in leadership. You're working so hard to get to the top, but you don't spend much time at the top if you make it to the top. Right. And it's all for naught if you didn't enjoy the whole process of getting there.
Right.
And when I look back on that mountain climb, I enjoy the people that I met there. And the people who went on the climb with me. I enjoy the hardship. I learned so much when I got sick and other people got sick and we had to hold them up and help them get up there and make sure that 100% of us made it to the top and back safely. Like, to me, that is a leadership course around how do you help people get to a place that more than likely most people don't ever get to.
Right.
Like that to me is leadership. Like, how do I help create other leaders? How do I help undergird folks and give them confidence and inspire them and motivate them to achieve something that ordinarily they would have never even tried? So that's what the mountain climb was for me.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right. Now we're going to pivot to your I just want to touch on one of the ways that you have been able to incorporate social justice in the work you do and in the example you set as a leader. Because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about all of the activity that's been happening with the Union League here in Philadelphia. And for anybody who's not familiar, it's probably made maybe national news, maybe not national news, but if you search Union League and Ron DeSantis, if you Google that, you'll probably see some of what's been happening with that. But you took a stand, you decided to take a stand and sort of decline an offer from the Union League because of their affiliation with Ron DeSantis. Correct me if I'm getting it wrong, but just talk to us a little bit about, as much as you can, and as much as your role will allow you to, but talk to us a little bit about the decision making around what you did with Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Union League.
Yeah, the Union League is been, somewhat of a partner to me, and we were starting to build that partnership with the Union League with Big Brothers Big Sisters, specifically with their Good Citizens Day program. Mm-hmm. And their Good Citizens Day program has been around for a while, where they help kids to understand the history of the United States and the history of patriotism and all of that stuff. And so we had been talking to them over the last 2 years about doing a program, and we had just finalized doing it with them prior to them honoring the governor of Florida. And then when they decided to go forward with, and as a result of our kids and families being a part of the Good Day Citizen program through the Union League, each kid had the possibility of qualifying for a $5,000 scholarship to college. As you know, college is important to me. So I was like, this is awesome for our kids. I was excited. Right. And then that ceremony came up, and my staff started reaching out to me even before I even heard about it. It's like, Marcus, how can we be a part of someone who honors a person who's put policies in place that are harmful to the very kids that we serve? And then I said, you're right. And I started looking at it. And so we did a letter to the Union League saying we were going to withdraw our participation in the Good Citizens Day program, and specifically citing just a misalignment of our core values with what we believe the Union League's core values were.
Right.
And that was a hard decision for me, not because I didn't want to disappoint the Union League, but because we had gotten our families all excited about being a part of this. You know how hard it is to get families to sign up for stuff and say they're going to do it.
That's right.
And now your CEO is coming back and saying, nope, I'm pulling you out. Right. And also that $5,000 you were qualifying for, you won't qualify for that anymore.
Right.
So that was kept me up a little bit at night.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
But just for a little more context, I want people to understand the gravity of what you did, because everybody's not familiar with what the Union League is, and I don't claim to know a lot about it. I've been in the building a few times before all this Florida stuff happened, but it is the one of, if not the oldest sort of civic social organizations in the country. Like, the founding fathers sat in some of the chairs in these rooms, and this is where people gathered to conduct business, to trade, to basically create the policies that created the United States of America. There was a lot of stuff happening in this building. And it still holds a lot of that legacy and a lot of that weight and a lot of that gravity and a lot of that authority in this country. Again, just Google the Union League Philadelphia and you'll see, kind of, and I'm not trying to big up I'm not standing for the Union League. I want people to understand the level of courage and ethics and leadership it took for you to tell them no. I just want people to understand that was not a small thing. You know, you could say, oh, well, yeah, if you messing with Florida and Ron, then you shouldn't be messing with them. But that was a big deal for you to have to kind of go back on everything you had already worked to build with them, and the idea that this partnership was done, and it didn't take, 2 weeks or 6 months. This had been a journey to create this partnership and to get this opportunities for these students with an organization of that caliber. To then have to make that decision took a lot of strength and courage and fortitude on your part to go back on. So I just want people to understand, because I think, people might be listening to this like, oh, well, whatever. But this was a big deal. This was a very big deal for you and for them.
I appreciate you saying that, Stephanie. It took over 2 years for us to build a partnership and took one email to stop it. Right.
Yeah.
And the ramifications of that. And also, in addition to what you said about Union League, and to this day, some of the most powerful, most influential people in Philadelphia and surrounding Philadelphia are a part of the Union League. Their membership is one of people who are making policy, people who are running some of the biggest businesses in the city. As you know, our organization survives off of donations and the generosity of others. And so I didn't take this decision lightly. And at the end of the day, one of the things I told the others was, you stand on principle and you live off the interest. And what that means for me is that as a leader, I have to, my guiding star, my North Star is, what are the core values that we espouse as an organization? And so if those are our core values are about supporting everyone, about bringing people together, about making sure that kids thrive in their future, that every child graduates from high school with a plan for their future and a mentor whose impact lasts a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so as I look at our core values and I look at, and I didn't disparage the Union League at all. Mm-hmm. I didn't disparage Mr. DeSantis at all. I just said that these don't align with what the message that we're trying to send to our kids and families. Right. And I'm open to I got calls from folks. I said, listen, well, let's have a conversation. Right. If you think this is an issue, let's have a conversation. Don't just give comments and you don't know what you're talking about. And so, yeah, it's one of those things, Stephanie, that, as we know, and you see a lot of this playing out across the country. You see what just happened in Tennessee with the 2 Black legislators who were just expelled. Which is crazy to me. When you have Black folks, Black leaders who are not being divisive, who are trying to support a group of people who need a bigger voice, and giving them an opportunity to amplify that voice.
Yeah.
And then there's an establishment that says you're wrong, right? And tries to throw you under the bus for doing the very thing you were hired to do.
That's right.
Right. And so it was an easy decision for me, to be honest with you. Right. It was really easy. And anyone who has something negative to say about it, for me, that means that they just don't believe in what I believe in. And I believe that every particularly Black child deserves an opportunity to be inspired and motivated for their future.
Amen. Amen to that. All right. So as we wrap up, because this has been an amazing conversation, I have to, just say that and thank you again. What tip would you give people to encourage them to think outside the box in their pivot? Like, whether it be maybe a how to get in that frame of mind or just some motivation to get in that frame of mind, what would you say to somebody who was thinking about a pivot to get them to think a little differently?
My advice would be lean into the fear, right? Like every person in life has, is going to go through 3 things. They're going to be either about to go into a storm, they're going to either be in the storm or they're coming out of the storm. Mm-hmm. And the more storms we go through, I'm hoping that as you think about these pivots, that you understand that none of the storms destroyed you. None of you are still here. And so why allow fear to dictate what you are inspired to do in your life? Like, my goal is to take fear off the table. And when you take fear off the table, the whole world opens up to you.
It really does. Mm-hmm.
Right? I didn't bring fear with me with the Ron DeSantis decision or the Union League decision, and feeling like I was fearful that the families were going to be mad at me for not getting the $25,000. But guess what? The Black community stood up afterwards, and we are getting $150,000 as a result of standing up for our core values, right? And so I would just say to your listeners, don't be surprised when you make a pivot that's the right thing to do, how you will be blessed on the back end.
Yes.
And then you're not dealing with addition, you're dealing with multiplications. And so your future will be multiplied in very good ways when you're making the right decisions.
Man, you said a word right there. You said a word, about to take it to church. But we are going to end on that note. Marcus, thank you again so much. This was an awesome, awesome conversation. You all can find Marcus at themarcusallen.com. All his socials are linked there. So definitely follow along, because who knows, he might be on Everest next week. He might be in a Blue Origin rocket headed to the moon the week after that. We don't know where Marcus is going to end up, but we know that you will be doing something amazing and charging head first with no fear. So thank you again for being on The Pivot with Stephanie Humphrey.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.